Music licensing is quite complicated, and I'm here today to help clear things up. First of all, some background. As you may know, cheerleading and other performance sports perform routines to music at live events, which are accompanied by a music mix made up of edited and adapted music. Tracks are cut down, tempo shifted, combined with other tracks, and can be used with voiceovers and sound effects. And then a choreographed routine is performed to the mix, with artistic interpretation often forming part of the judging criteria. This is very different to just listening to music privately, as we all normally do with download or streaming services, or even physical media like CDs or vinyl records. The extra rights we need for music as sports performers are protected by copyright law, so we need permission from both the recording artist and songwriters to cut down and change their music and perform our routines to it, which is done by negotiating and paying for a license with each of them. A few years ago, a big record label, Sony Music, representing many recording artists, took legal action against cheerleading for infringing on their copyright. Teams of music producers were editing and adapting Sony's artists, and many others, music into a mix to accompany their routine without getting a license from the artist's record label or publisher. Basically, people were using their artist's work without paying for it, and Sony Music took legal action to protect them. It was a big deal for cheerleading, but it could have been worse. Firstly, the lawsuit happened in just the US, when this is actually a global problem. Other sports federations in other countries have also suffered the consequences of unlicensed music. Secondly, Sony is just one of many record labels. And then there's the songwriters to consider, whose rights are typically represented by music publishers. In this case, it was just one record label and not the whole music industry that came after cheerleading. Sony's lawsuit in particular left the performance sport industry confused about what is required and how to legally license music. There are a number of rights required for cheerleading and other performance sports, which we've had confirmed by the very lawyers who represented Sony in the lawsuit. There are essentially three parts to this. First, the license required by the team or music producer for making the mix. Second, the team performing to the mix. And third, the license is required by the event producers. So let's run through this. The team or music producer making the mix needs the rights to edit and adapt the music, combine it with other tracks, add sound effects, voiceovers and beats. And then the team performing to the mix needs the rights to choreograph to the mix, make up to 35 copies of the mix and distribute that between each team member so they can train at home. And then they need the right to perform the mix in public, which is subject to the venue having a performing rights license for playing the music in its natural form in the venue. It's also natural for us as sports performers to want to share a video of our routine with the music, typically by uploading that video onto YouTube or Facebook. This last one is actually covered under the UGC agreements already in place between the music industry and YouTube and Facebook. And it uses YouTube and Facebook's Content ID or rights claiming systems for unmonetized videos. However, if you wish to monetize your video, including the music, or use it commercially to advertise your team or competition, then you'll need to negotiate and purchase a sync license from the music rights holders, which will cost a lot more. So finally, let's move on to the rights required by an event producer. They first need a performing rights license to cover them for playing the music in its natural form in the venue, which they can get from a local collecting society. And then if they wish to sell DVDs, USBs with video content or other memorabilia, then they need a license to cover each of those items. A live streaming license is then required if they wish to broadcast the entire competition on a platform. And of course, a video on demand license, referred to as a sync license, is required if they wish to put that video online on a video on demand service. And finally, broadcast, if the competition is going to be shown on TV. So now we know what rights are required. How do we get a license? Well, as you can probably see, music copyright is actually quite complicated, and there are multiple people who own a song. Let's take a look at this example of Travis Scott's Sicko Mode. We have the recording artist who performs the song, and then we have the songwriters who wrote the lyrics and melodies. In this example, there are over 30 writers in the song, some of whom own less than 1% of the music. This is the most extreme case we've ever come across, But on average, there are 9 writers on each song who need to give you their permission before you can license it. Each writer is typically represented by a different music publisher, and that can also be different in each country. And in order to license any of these rights previously mentioned, then you need permission from every single one of these writers, plus the record label representing the recording artist. Pretty complicated when you're trying to clear 6 to 8 pieces of music for your team's mix, and even worse if you're an event producer trying to clear 6,000 to 8,000 pieces of music for a big competition and upload the video content onto a VOD platform. Traditionally, you needed to research who owns the rights, contact each and every record label and publisher that owns those rights, and then negotiate that with them. It just isn't scalable. From the music industry's point of view, they're set up to do the big deals, like the Super Bowl ads. Plus, it's also very time-consuming and expensive, especially when teams are on a quick turnaround and a limited budget. So that's it. We hope you enjoyed this short educational video. Our next one is on clearing up the confusion about cover music.